Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines, Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend in the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, brunch rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you back with another, not live, with another Operation GCD special series here, Chasing Miniere. Like to remind folks of the interwebs once again, JJ Vance, not the vice president, host of Operation GCD. We're Chasing Miniere, a series here with a fellow folk of the interweb who discovered Operation GCD and his journeys of looking into his genealogy and discovering the Society of the Cincinnati, and discovering that what's the title of our series today, Chasing Miniere, because Brad Minyard, when looking for his ancestor back there in the Revolution of the Society of Cincinnati era of establishment with all the officers of Washington's army, that is, and discovered that his forefather was involved in the spy operation surrounding George Washington's spy mission or spy apparatus, and they seem to be focused on, at least in that time with Brad's ancestry there, focused on the Aaron Burr conspiracy. And that's what we've been largely chasing here in our Chasing Miniere series. Brad, welcome back, sir. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you once again for having me. JJ, always a pleasure. And we were just having a really interesting conversation before we started recording about Cincinnati and just some stuff you pointed out to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, let's jump back in there where we were just talking about, like you're talking there, because we were discussing this where we jumped off in the last volume in this series, volume 3, which was in around the activities of John Lind, this character in this entire narrative of the Aaron Burr conspiracy, and the infamous early onset of this factional warfare within the Society of Cincinnati, as I allege. And this John Lind character is going between Quebec and New Orleans, but in doing so, you found record of him traversing the Mississippi and around Fort Messick, and which was the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. We were just saying, well, what else was going on there around 1803 when John Lind was there?
Man, a lot was going on in 1803. in Fort Massac. So you got the
Yeah.
Ohio, you got the Ohio River meeting up with the Mississippi River. It's the two largest rivers in North America meeting at this one place. I mean, wars have been fought over this spot, over this particular area, and we have a lot of action. A lot of important people. Ricard went up to Fort Massac. He was there.
And
How far is Fort?
just for the
How
sake
far is?
for the sake of the folks of the interwebs who may just be hearing the name Rickard or Ricard here, depending on how I pronounce it or you pronounce it, because I always pronounce it both ways. Who is Ricard?
William
Relative
Ricard.
to the story here.
Well, Captain William Ricard recruited my grandfather in 1790s in North Carolina. Ricard was a recruiter there in North Carolina, among other things. And Ricard and Miniere are both in Manhattan at the same time, where Aaron Burr and the widow Kitty Dorr is there. They were in Charleston together when Theodosia Burr was there. And then a lot of stuff later where they weren't necessarily in the same city, but just tied into the story.
And
Altogether.
Joseph Minyard being the presumed Frenchman name that your forefather James Minyard was operating under within the spy apparatus you're talking about with the Captain Ricard, who the widow Dewar there, Kitty Dewar, is a close associate of George Washington and the widow of the man who was running George Washington's entire spy operations. William
Yes,
Dewar's
sir.
father.
Yeah, he launched
These are
that
important
program.
notes when you're talking William Ricard, right?
Yes, sir. So William Ricard, he was in Fort Massac. I can't remember the year, but it was around this time period. I'd mentioned off camera that Wilkinson actually corresponded with Alexander Hamilton in the late 1700s, early 1800s, basically trying to convince Hamilton to shut down Fort Massac. He didn't think it was important anymore, which,
Right.
of course, centuries of civilizations have disagreed with that statement. But
what do you think that was
his
about?
position.
What do you think that was about?
To obtain control of Fort Massac for himself.
Right. So what year was this? He wrote it to Hamilton?
Well, it obviously wasn't after 1804. Yes, sir. He wrote it to Hamilton, but I can't remember the year. But there was
So
correspondence.
Is he pleading to Hamilton because Hamilton's the president general of the Society of Cincinnati? Because otherwise that don't make any sense.
That's a very good question. And also, why is Ricard writing Hamilton asking for furlough in 1799?
Well, I suspect that's because he's on Team Washington there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you've documented, Washington wasn't feeling too great around this time.
Yeah. But the fact that anyone's writing Alexander Hamilton to keep a military fort open, there's no context for that, unless you consider that it's in the context that he's the president general of the Society of Cincinnati.
Oh, for sure.
He was.
For sure.
So Fort Massac,
I agree.
Fort Massac, very important. This is a very important time period where John Lynn's traveling up and down the mighty Mississippi from New Orleans to and from somewhere, right? We were discussing where his port of entry would have been. I mean, if he's going to New Orleans on the Mississippi, he's been going through Fort Massac. He's gone through Cincinnati.
Yeah, because Cincinnati is on the Mississippi River. I don't know how far it is from Fort Massac, but it can't be too far.
It's it was the last port of entry into the Northwest at the time, that and Louisville, right? But Cincinnati was the established port on the Ohio River, so you had to go through. If John Lynn's coming to and from Quebec, he's going through Cincinnati to get to Fort Massac into New Orleans. And so there's a lot of Society of Cincinnati folks going on at Fort Massac at the time. So in 1803, you got Lewis and Clark out there on the onset of their expedition. They do I think a 2 or 3 month stopover there at Fort Massac, and then you have General Wilkinson and Aaron Burr, and the Aaron Burr, two of the conspirators in the Aaron Burr conspiracy to take over America, meeting there in 1805.
I'm pretty sure Andrew Jackson was also there. I can't remember the exact year. I'm getting bad with years, but but Andrew Jackson was there too.
That's right after Burr murders Alexander Hamilton, like we were just saying. They're pleading with Hamilton to keep the place open, they're saying that they don't need it open anymore, right? So, like, they seem like they had some ulterior motives even before they murked Hamilton, right?
That's my take, because why would you just close down shop on one of the most important spots geographically in North America? That just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It makes absolutely no sense at all. And it also it makes equal sense to write Alexander Hamilton with that request. What's the Secretary
Well, that's
of the
obviously
Treasury
who he
going to
was
do for
working
you?
for. I mean, that implies that Hamilton is his boss.
No, I think it implies that who's calling
Legally
the
or
shots.
oh yeah, oh for sure. Oh, I agree 100% on that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jefferson may have been president, but he was not a man. He may have been friendly with the society, but and he may have served as a captain in the British militia in British Army in Virginia, in the Virginia militia. But he was not a man, and he may have been a member of the society by virtue of his presidency. But you know, I think that comes down to the hierarchy, right? You got the OG members of the society, and then you got a guy like Jefferson.
Yeah.
They may be friends with him. They may get along, but who's really calling the shots there? And I think that's
It's
Hamilton.
very telling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very telling that Ricard's asking for Frollo and Wilkinson's wanting to shut down an important fort, but it all goes through Hamilton.
And as you say, Wilkinson is really the brains and the power behind the Burr conspiracy. And I think that's a very salient characteristic to understand. The Burr's a front man. Wilkinson is very much this much more powerful figure.
Well, Burr had the charisma, Wilkinson had the guns, and Blennerhassett had the money.
Oh,
Or Blennerhassett among others.
Yeah, there's many others. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, there's many others. But it is interesting that we find John Lind in the same atmosphere, right? The same environment of a bunch of society business. And
he's right in the thick of it.
The Burr conspiracy, because he's friends with Wilkinson, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, they're friends. But John Lind, the only enemies he had were just people he owed money to, it seemed like. But everybody that was important, John Lind was friends with them.
Right. We don't know how John Lind and Wilkinson met, though, do we?
No, we don't. And, that's a very good point, because John Lind is just some guy that came from Canada after he died, married a Spanish gal, becomes notary, becomes constable, becomes justice of the peace.
Wait a second. I'd like to go back there a second, Brad. You just kind of straight past that he fake died in Quebec and married a lady and two ladies in New Orleans after that, and had a really prominent career politically speaking and in the military.
Yeah.
He served in the War of 1812.
He did. Well, he served in 1807, but he was definitely involved in 1812. Just he actually got captured by the British. I'm kind of jumping ahead and giving a little stuff away, but he was quote unquote captured by the British and spent a few days on a British vessel.
But he's got that pension application for his service in the War of 1812, which I presume he played some role in the Battle of New Orleans.
That's my take, and that's a good point, because the pension application was for the War of 1812, which insinuated that he served in some manner. But
where was he in 1812? What was going on in 1812? The Battle of New Orleans, right? Andrew Jackson. Yeah, you just said that was saying the same environment years prior, right? Up there at Fort Messick.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And
I just think it shows more of a backstory of these timeline of events that preceded the War of 1812 there in New Orleans, with folks like John Lind and his associates like Andrew Jackson, and at all, because this dude knows everybody. But it gives this backstory. So you have this. It's not separate. What I'm saying is not separate events. You have Theodosia Burr disappearing, as we've discussed in previous volumes here on the series, disappearing there in around New Year's Eve, 1811, right? The early onset of what these activities in between. So you start looking at these people that are in different parts of America or even Quebec, for Lind's sake in this matter, and folks like Constant Freeman who are up in Quebec as well, who we're going to talk about today, right?
Well, Nate, you read my mind, because that was the next thing I was going to share. Is in 1787, Constant Freeman is in Cincinnati, paying dues to the the Massachusetts chapter of the Cincinnati. But the payment, when he mailed it, he was mailing it from Cincinnati.
Interesting. And
And that was 1787.
Yeah,
which is
that's what I'm getting at. We were trying to, as we backtrack through all these different seemingly disparate areas of the country and even Quebec, like I said, with all of these people know each other, we can demonstrate that these people are doing these seemingly odd activities, and they all seem to go around both sides of this Aaron Burr conspiracy, right?
Because in 1787, before the same year, but before he was in Cincinnati, he was on the merchant petition with John Lind up in Quebec. And the year before that, his father, who was also named Constant Freeman, who was a loyalist, by the way, left Quebec and moved to Boston and started an ale house, successful ale house. But they, the Freemans were exiled. Constant Freeman Jr. was exiled from Quebec, as I've mentioned, but his father, Constant Freeman Sr., stayed.
Well, they were loyalists. This is British controlled Quebec, right?
Yeah, British controlled Quebec. So you have Constant Freeman Jr. leaving Quebec because he's exiled because he wouldn't take up arms against his fellow countrymen, but his father stayed. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, but if he's a loyalist, I guess that kind of makes sense, right?
Well, but it seems like Junior would also, it just seems like, hey, Thanksgiving dinner is going to be awkward this year.
Well, same thing went down at Ben Franklin's house. Ben Franklin's son was a prominent loyalist during the war, and the British governor of New Jersey. How do you think that went down at Thanksgiving for old Ben?
Yeah. I guess unfortunately for those families, probably that happened a lot. But
I think it happens a lot in the society. That's what we're talking about, right?
So yeah,
the dividing faction of the society with this British and these Anglo-British American interests versus the American interests.
So Dad leaves Quebec in 1786. Constant Freeman's still there in 1787, and then also in 1787, he's in Cincinnati. And then Constant Freeman is a lot of things. Because we haven't even.
He's a man out of the Massachusetts chapter of the society, a lieutenant in the Revolution for Henry Knox, right?
Yeah. So after he got exiled from Quebec, the next year he's a lieutenant under Henry Knox.
Yeah.
Just like that. Henry Knox, by the way, Henry Knox.
Which Henry Knox is largely credited with starting the Society of Cincinnati, advocating George Washington started.
He is. Yeah, he is the reason it exists. It was his idea. George Washington, I think, just kind of went along with it, but no, it was Henry Knox's baby.
Well, I think at some point in time, Washington wanted to put a lid on whatever was going to go on, right? He's saw some shit popping off, didn't like which way it was going over a number of years, and was like, wait a second, all right, I'll do these things. You know what I mean? Because I don't think he wanted to really start the society based on my take of some of his notes and journals and whatnot. And I also, he takes over control of the society after the war, right? So then he's doing that, and and he doesn't want to. There's a portion of these folks within the society that want him to just take over the country and be king, and he's telling them no. This is during the 8.5 or so years we have the Continental Congress before he becomes president. So, again, it's at varying points in time. I think he was just trying to put a lid on some shit that was popping off.
Yeah, he was. I guess he saw what was coming. He wasn't a dumb man by any means.
No, and people can say what they want for him as far as why he did what he did, but I'm quite confident in my assertion that that he was facing treason charges. So at some point in time, in and around, I believe it's 1771 or 1772, where he starts traipsing around Alexandria, Virginia, in a military officer's uniform, wearing that red sack he stole from his former boss that he murked, General Braddock. I think he knows he's going to be facing treason charges, or was facing treason charges, and was ready to fight until fight everything he had left.
This will be something we'll have to kind of research off camera, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention because there was a weird correspondence in 1789 between Constant Freeman and George Washington. George Washington actually wrote Constant Freeman, and he there was a reference to quote unquote Redstone, and I haven't really been able to find much on it. But that was, a couple years after he paid into the Cincinnati, and then 2 years, in 1789, George Washington's writing him, asking him about Redstone.
Interesting.
You
So
ever heard
in the
of
years
Redstone?
after, I don't know. We'll have to look into more. I'm not familiar. That name. That name doesn't sound familiar, but it sounds very interesting. So in the years after the war, he appears on the merchants list of qualified merchants there in Quebec, right? So this is still British occupied Quebec, though, correct?
Yes, sir.
The same British occupied Quebec he'd been thrown out of, right? So how does old Constant Freeman get himself on the list with John Lind as a approved list of merchants there in British occupied Quebec?
And we know it wasn't his dad, because you could make the argument, well, hell, maybe it was his dad, but his dad had already moved back to Boston.
Right.
So it was, maybe he's up there in a military uniform for the United States, and maybe he just has that in his back pocket. Maybe it would be an act of war, or maybe he wasn't wearing a uniform.
Well,
that's a good question.
That's what I was asking. I don't know what the the environment was post Treaty of Paris in September of 1783. 3.5 years later, when John Lind and and Constant Freeman here on that list in Quebec. I don't understand. I'm not exactly certain what the environment is, but I can't imagine it's very. John Lind might be okay, but claiming he's an Irishman, but I can't imagine it. Constant Freeman would be met with the same gratitude or appreciations.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And but again, though, he was part of this merchants thing in 1787, so maybe that trumped whatever was going on between countries. Maybe he was in the Masonic.
I don't know what it is at the time, but you have to. I'm assuming there's some French contingent in the mix right there in Quebec at the time, right?
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. If you're in Quebec, the French are involved.
That's what I'm saying. So you have the French contingent, you have the British contingent, and you have the society, which is American and French. Which I'm even
it's
myself.
All very weird.
Days, I've been concentrating myself. I'm doing less American society, research outside of what we're discussing here in this series, and and also what we're discussing here in this series, and getting more into the French side with obviously the French society connections in New Orleans in this tale. And it was brought to my attention the other day that Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, there, old JFK's dead wife, Jackie Kennedy, her father, John, I think, or Jack Bouvier, I believe was his name. He was a hereditary member of the French side of the Society of Cincinnati.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the French are, like I said, man, they're always there. Every twist and turn, the French are there.
Well, especially in New Orleans and Quebec in this tale, huh?
Especially in New Orleans and Quebec.
So he's doing a lot of. He's got a very prolific individual. This Constant Freeman in 1789, he's back in Boston on a tax list. But then in 1789, he's seemingly starting to do some more bidding for his old commanding officer Henry Knox, right?
Yeah. So he got sent over there. Was it with Pinckney? I can't remember. But yeah,
it says on July 15, 1789, Knox writes Freeman and apologizes for not responding sooner to Freeman's most recent letter.
Okay, yeah.
Knox discusses the possibilities of civil employment for Freeman and comments on the amount of time it may take for Congress to make the necessary preparations. On September 24, 1789, George Washington writes Constant Freeman. That's what I'm saying. So you can take these letters at face value as you cite them on your website, and you've done a good job of encapsulating Constant Freeman's, he's hobnobbing with the men who were running America at the time, General Knox, soon to be President Washington, right? President General Society, but soon to be U.S. President Washington. And he's transmitting messages and doing activities in between these men, it seems. You can take them at their face for these things of civil employment as they reference and not getting back to them sooner. Whereas I presume what these were coded letters of some regard.
That's you know what? That's very possible or probable, I should say.
And Constant Freeman is the go-between because he's the trusted man within the society, lieutenant to Knox, etc. Right?
Man, he's so trusted that so I've mentioned this, but he actually was sent down to Georgia. Georgia hated Constant Freeman. The politicians there they did everything in their power to sabotage Constant Freeman's assignment from George Washington. He was there.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me, Brad. If you think about these factional things within the society, the Georgia chapter may not have been very pro-Washington.
Doesn't seem like it. So he's down there trying to hold them accountable as far as where the money's going, how troops getting paid, trying to soothe hostilities with the natives and the settlers. But he actually was sent over to Natchez in 1792 because the Pinckney Treaty was in 1795.
So I think you're getting a little bit ahead of one point. If I can just take us back a moment, on October 4th, 1792, speaking to this go-between I'm talking about and these coded messages and letters and whatnot, Knox wrote Freeman and asked Freeman to contact William Duer on his behalf and inquire from Duer if Duer had received Knox's letters, right? So Duer being the guy who's running Washington's spy apparatus, his whole operations.
Right. Well, like I was telling you in the first episode, when you pointed out that, or when we discussed how he screwed a lot of French people, he didn't just screw French people. He screwed a lot of fellow Americans too. So there was a lot of people really pissed off at William Duer. And it's very interesting that the year that all this went down with the market crash is the same year that this correspondence is going on with Knox.
Yeah, I mean, Duer could have been a total scumbag, but I presume that what you're describing is some sort of you can call it lawfare if you wanted to, but it's warfare of varying capacities.
Yeah, just because of the timing and who's corresponding with who. It's like I said, man, there can't be this many coincidences. I mean, at some point.
For sure. But back to where you just left off with his southern operations here, much like everyone else in this storyline between the Lynns, the Miniere Menards, the Rickard Rickards. That's just one
everywhere.
person. They're always traveling. It's like that Johnny Cash song, "I've been everywhere, man."
Yeah. And in all the places they're at, they're doing important stuff with important people. They're not, like you said, Ricard didn't, but people didn't go down there to eat New Orleans to eat beignets and crawfish.
I mean, he might have. If he didn't at least have that on his list of activities to do. He failed himself.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah.
I've had some good po' boy sandwiches and some delicious beignets in New Orleans. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a bonus for being in New Orleans. Yeah, but that ain't why they went down there.
No, but I mean, if you don't have on your list of activities, I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice to that, right?
I agree. Oh, best food in the world, or at least where I've been.
Plus, to date, or at least the last time I was there, this was still the case. 2019, circa maybe 2020. It's still basically international waters, at least in the French Quarter. You know what I mean? You can negotiate, you can barter, you can haggle for prices. And if they tell you no, you guys are basically international waters, and they'll just nod in agreement. You're like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like no other place in this country you'll go to. It's so unique. Okay, maybe Natchez is a close second, but there's no place like New Orleans.
I've never been to Natchez. That's in Mississippi, right down there in the southern branch of the Mississippi River through in the state of Mississippi, though, right?
Yes, sir. Natchez was a very important location because it was on it was on a mound, but also it was on a bluff. So if there's somebody coming down the river that you don't want to come down, you can see them miles and miles and miles ahead, and it's the last spot before New Orleans. So Natchez was very, very important geographically in that regard.
Well, if I'm ever successful in, or I'm sorry, if I ever make it back down to Mississippi, if I'm ever allowed back in the state of Mississippi, I'll have to check that out sometime. It sounds like an interesting spot.
Hey, I'll vouch for you.
You know, don't if I go back down there, I just can't go anywhere near Jackson County, Pascagoula.
That's where I grew up. That's what. Yeah, you told me that story, man. I hate that happened to you, but it's such a coincidence. And also that you've not only heard of Blairsville, Georgia, but you've lived in Blairsville, Georgia. It's just nobody knows where that is.
I've visited there quite frequently. I have a friend in the regions.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, but yeah, you've been there, not lived there. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't blame necessarily Mississippi people, but you know the ones I dealt with, at least they weren't nice. I didn't care for them. I got nothing nice to say about them. The Attorney General's office of the state, they're a bunch of dicks. You know what I mean? But
always have been. Yeah, Mississippi is so corrupt, man.
Well, they claim to have investigated the entire thing, and then and I said, well, can I get a report or a disposition? They're like, nope. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys are just like the Jackson County people, I see.
Yep, business as usual.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever go back to Mississippi, but maybe, perhaps someday. But again, Pascagoula,
like I said, man, I'll vouch for you.
Jackson County, nah. No
well,
offense,
Jackson
Brad,
County's on the other end of the state from where I live, and then it's on the other end of the state in the other direction where Natchez is. So you won't even come close to Jackson County.
That's good because there's a couple of fellas that got abducted by aliens allegedly back in Pascagoula in the early 70s, and they probably had a better experience than I did in Pascagoula.
I've heard that tale growing up. Yeah, I mean everybody that is from there has heard that. I've talked to some people that say it's bullshit, and I've talked to some people that say no, that really happened.
Well, if you want my opinion, I suspect it has something to do with the spook operations that go in and around the quote unquote CIA style naval style port there in Pascagoula. But that's just my opinion. Some sort of
what purpose is it serving? Perhaps. Yeah, I've always wondered that myself. What purpose is that base even serving? Why is it? It's just taking up space.
Are we talking about the Naval Yard or the NOAA Corps Yard? I was referring to the NOAA Corps Yard myself, but they're probably about one and the same as far as operations go.
Yeah, it was. Sorry if I offended anybody there, but yeah, I was talking about the Navy.
I was referring to those quote unquote scientists that run around the world in ships wearing naval officer uniforms that the CIA loves to embed their people into. The NOAA Corps, the North. I don't know. North, I'll just look it up. Something about observational atmospheric assholes, I think, maybe. National Observatory. There we go. National Observatory assholes. There we go. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. There we go.
Let's see.
So they have a nice little station. They have a nice little station there in Pascagoula, Brad. They got a little bit of a history. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Would not surprise me. But it's one of the friendliest towns you'll ever visit. That's the juxtaposition of Pascagoula. It's one of the.
I think the NOAA Corps station is right next to the Elks Club. Stop in for a nice chili cook-off on the weekends.
Yeah, chili cook-offs, crawfish bowl.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you say it's a nice place, I have no doubt it is. I'm just saying those are the places where you hide some dark shit, right? That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. The nicest places are also the most fucked up.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it's a good way to hide some dark shit underneath that veil, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying the Elks Club in particular. I'm just saying there is like an Elks Club right next to that NOAA Corps station in Pascagoula. But
yeah, it's right there. Yeah.
It's the idea that the Freemasons do, chili cook-offs or whatever other community service activity, right? It's hiding underneath the veil of being a friendly aperation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, shit. It's obviously working.
But these spook operations in around Pascagoula and the Mississippi River in Massachusetts and Mississippi didn't start here in the 1970s with fake alien abductions. That those fellas probably had a better experience than I did in Pascagoula, but didn't start there. It didn't start in 2020 when I had my incidents there. It seems to be there's a long history of these things, but that's what I wonder what guys John Linden gang are traveling under through these seemingly British to Spanish to American occupied territories, seemingly without much record of their travels, despite we have a record of them being in these various disparate locations. So what flag were they operating under? Who what guys were they operating under, you think, to travel along these waterways?
Good question. And along those lines, so in 1792, Natchez Commandant Manuel de Goso wrote the Georgia governor, Edward Telfair, about his concerns over disputes between settlers and natives.
Cousin of George, I believe, Edward Telfair.
Yeah, so now this is the same time that Constant Freeman is down in Georgia trying to straighten all this kind of stuff out. But so the same year, the Spanish commandant Natchez Goso's writing Telfair in Georgia, who's kind of resisting, maybe not outright, but privately, he's kind of resisting George Washington. To the
Telfair.
Point where Telfair, yeah. I mean, look, you don't send Constant Freeman down there if everything's great and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So, but like we've discussed, the Yazoo land fraud in Georgia, the corrupt politicians, so we have Gayoso writing Telfair about concerns over possible disputes between settlers and natives, which is the exact reason why Constant Freeman was in Georgia.
So you're telling me that it was in response directly to the Yazoo land scandal, and that's just not a silly name, Yazoo. That's a real place.
No, actually, Yazoo. The Yazoo land scandal was named after the Yazoo River in Mississippi.
I was just being ridiculous, Brad. But say what is the
what
is the Yazoo land scandal?
Yeah, but that's how it got its name. It was named after the Yazoo River.
No, sure. I was just making reference to it. Sounds like a silly name, Yazoo, but it is.
It is a silly name. I've always thought it was a silly name, actually. And there's a Yazoo County and a Yazoo City.
I'm guessing this is a Creek native name or something. Is that what the deal is?
That's my assumption, but in full honesty, I haven't researched actually where the name came from. But my assumption is probably it's a indigenous name. Yeah.
So in 1792. Constant Freeman gets sent down to Georgia to settle from George Washington on a mission from Washington to settle this dispute that has erupted following this Yazoo land scandal.
Well, I think initially it was just to. Sorry, I'm flipping the page there. I think initially it was just to hold the government accountable because they weren't really doing what they were supposed to be doing, and okay, this is the Cincinnati.
Sounds like there's a lot of folks doing a lot of that they weren't supposed to be doing down there, right?
Yeah, the government.
You have British, you have Spanish, right? What else you got going on down there?
Yeah, so Savannah's kind of which is probably why Minyard never traded there. But the Savannah has a strong British presence, always has. In fact, the British overtook Savannah during the Revolution there for a while, and a lot of the citizens were like, when the war was over, they were like, "Shit, can we just stay British?" So yeah, Savannah, which is incidentally where Freeman posted up. But he was there to, I guess, on paper, settle that dispute. But it probably had a lot or even more to do with the land scandal because Georgia was trying to, claim all the land to the Mississippi, which is very bold.
Right. Well, was it Georgia or was it the British?
Oh.
Yeah, because
we're
talking about the British are still operating, I think, what is now most of southern Alabama and the panhandle of Florida. For example, I believe they own the port of Mobile, what is now Mobile, right?
Yes, sir. So you had it changed hands multiple times.
That whole stretch of land, right? So between let me bring this up.
Yeah.
Right. That whole stretch of land, right? Can you see that, Brad?
Yeah, I do.
This whole stretch area from the panhandle of Florida all the way over here to New Orleans, all these ports changed hands numerous times, right?
Yes, they did between Spain and Britain, but Britain never had New Orleans. They had Natchez, but they never had New Orleans.
Right. But the British had, I think all the way over to about Mobile, I believe. I don't remember what the land. We obviously drew some lines back then because Alabama didn't exist at this time.
No, Alabama was initially part of Georgia, and then it was part of Mississippi, and then it just became its own thing. But yeah, because remember, Burr was captured in the Mississippi Territory, but it's present day Alabama.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, but yeah, there we go. I was about to say we drew lines later to make these things their current names, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But so this area here we're talking about, these land disputes, right? This was what Natchez is. I done lost my Brad. I done lost my Natchez. I've never been to this area of the country. I'm confused.
If you go where New Orleans is and just go straight north.
Again, I kind of ruled Mississippi out as a state, to be quite honest with you, sir. After my experience in Mississippi, I was like, I'm just going to go to put an X through this state. This place doesn't exist. Yeah, how do you drive there? Because there's no highway there, right?
What, Mississippi? Oh yeah, we have interstate.
To get down through Natchez. The interstate does not go through Natchez, correct?
No, the interstate goes through Vicksburg, which is north of Natchez. But to get to Natchez, you have to take the state route, not the federal, not the interstate.
Yep. So it's kind of still off the beat. What I'm getting at is it's still kind of off the beaten path today.
It's off the beaten path, but it's one of only 4 cities in the state of Mississippi that has a bridge going across the Mississippi River. The others being Vicksburg, Greenville, and oddly Lula, which is right across from
relations in the South.
Yeah. But yeah, 4 bridges in the whole state.
Well, that's what we're talking about. This whole area, that's what I'm saying. This whole area is famous for burning their bridges with each other, right? And that's what Constant Freeman's going down there to seemingly settle. Well, it obviously has something to do with the Yazoo land scandal, real place, not a fictional thing. There's going to be more than one side of that dispute, and it seems like Freeman may have been the guy coming in there and telling everyone to just take it down some notches, notches and nanches.
Henry Knox did exactly that. He sent in 1797, and remember, this is 2 years after the Pinckney Treaty that we've discussed, when Pinckney basically played poker with Gayoso and won. Well, Natchez, the Spaniards took their sweet ass time
to get access, right?
Well, the Spaniards took their sweet ass time getting out of Natchez, and look, they opened the river up, but I mean, it's like, hey, this is part of the treaty. This is our land. Y'all need to kind of get them moving. Yep. So in 1797, Henry Knox sent Constant Freeman to Natchez to talk to Gayoso to remind him of the treaty. And the next year,
the guy in the South, right? He's the guy that got.
Well,
he's the guy he's a proto. He's a Ricard, man. Lewis, right?
Oh, look,
or Ricard.
Freeman and William Ricard are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, but he seems like he has more political capital than Ricard.
Well, you say that, but shit.
I'm not saying he's not more politically connected. I'm not saying he's not more politically connected. What I'm saying is he's being used in more diplomatic scenarios. Ricard plays a different role. He's a
he is because Ricard resigned in 1801. So all that was over for Ricard after that. At least in an official capacity. But
I'm just saying, man, they serve different roles though. Is what I'm getting at, Brad. Is they serve different roles for old George here. Freeman's serving a diplomatic role, and Ricard's just a full blown spook role.
Yeah, but Constant Freeman's kind of spooky.
You ever seen that movie, The Recruit? Oh, I have no doubt. He's a man of society. They're all a bit spooky. But you ever seen that movie, The Recruit?
I don't think so.
I'm not a fan of Al Pacino. I'm not a fan of Al Pacino. It was Al Pacino and that Irish fella who actually does a good job of not being Irish in most movies. You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of his name at the moment, but Pacino's a recruiter for the CIA, and this is his recruit. The stories around or whatever, but that You know, you can watch that movie, and I just whenever I see when we're discussing Rickard here, I just for whatever reason in my mind, I just that's the image that pops up my brain hole is images of Al Pacino playing that character as the recruiter there in that film, the CIA recruiter, because that's really what Rickard was doing, or sorry, Ricard, especially when he's taking guardianship of teenagers in George's hometown of Alexandria in the 1790s, where George is living.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Because that's very weird.
Well, it's weird on its face, but if you consider the position he takes up in Rowan County just prior to that is succeeding George's recruiter for that spy network, right? He's the successor to that role, and then you see him recruit it. That's what you see him doing. You see him recruiting spooks. What I'm saying is you don't see Constant Freeman on that same trajectory, regardless of their political weight. They do. They serve different operations.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. So but even though they all ended up on the same team, Freeman took a definitely different path than Ricard did because they
all know each other.
It makes me and it makes you wonder too. Just the fact that he was doing that over there in Virginia with the orphans and getting custody of them. And until they turn of age, and he's teaching them the trade of tailor. But it kind of makes you wonder: is that kind of what went down with James Minyard / Miniere? Was Miniere an orphan? Because, like I said, I've never found records of his parents. Nothing. And then he ends up being a spook. Yeah. But yeah, that's a theory I've entertained.
That's because he met Captain William Ricard. Sometimes you're born into it, and sometimes you're recruited into it, it seems, right? Did I lose you, Brad? Brad, are you there? Is this thing on?
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Well, we're back here from a brief intermission there, Brad, and we left off with Constant Freeman, the man, the myth, the legend here, traveling all around America, Quebec, doing all sorts of activities here in the George Washington sphere of influence in the society activities in the late 18th century, early 19th century.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think he was doing? And what do you think his overall? What do you think of his overall mission relative to the Burr situation on these southerly missions of Constant Freeman? And why is this Freeman so constant? What kind of name is that in the first place?
Maybe it's a play on words. Because he's a Freemason, so he's a constant Freeman.
Right.
Because that was his dad's name. Right? But that name goes way back. In his line, because like I've mentioned, his dad was Constant Freeman, but there were other Constant Freemans before them.
A lot of Constant Freemans, then, huh?
A lot of Constant Freemans. But I've always thought. I agree. I've always thought
he's of the same kind of Massachusetts. Oh, it certainly is. He's part of that Massachusetts Bay heritage, right?
Yes, sir, he is. His father was actually an officer in the British military over here.
Well, that seems to be the case with most folks, and anyone in the society, right? Even George himself, right?
Yeah,
British
George
military
himself.
officer.
Yes, sir. But Constant Freeman Sr., he stayed.
Heritage, right?
Yeah, but he stayed on that side. George Washington obviously didn't.
No, I'm just saying. Oh, you're saying Constant Freeman Sr. fought in the Revolution for the British. I see.
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, I was just saying it seems like all of these guys come from a military heritage, though, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because that's how all the power gets handed down through these little societies. And then when it gets here, it's the Society of Cincinnati. But, you can make strong arguments. This has been going on for a long time.
Oh, for sure. So when did the Freemans get into America?
I haven't researched them that far back. If I'm being honest, most or if not all of my research really has just been on Constant Freeman, the one we talk about. And I'm just kind of vaguely familiar with his father because they have the same name. And he's a loyalist, so he stands out.
Sure. Samuel Freeman, 1630. Okay.
Yeah.
They got here early.
Yeah, they were I don't know if they were on the Mayflower, but they may have been on the next one.
No, they weren't on the Mayflower, but yeah, they were on the next one, right? They are a what they call the Mayflower style families. I don't think the term Mayflower, obviously I'm sure the people that descend from the Mayflower, I'm probably one of those people, but I don't give a shit what you call it. I'm sure some people get offended to that, but I mean, they're all kind of the Mayflower families, all these early boats to Massachusetts.
I think my family's story's cooler, though. I mean, we were on the 1739 voyage with all those Scottish folks. I think that's much cooler than saying you
British
were
things,
a Mayflower. What's that?
Well, I mean, have you seen the British culture? Anything British is anything Scottish is better than British.
In most
see what they
ways,
try to pass off as food in that country? That ain't food.
Go about it. Talking about England.
Well, I mean, I guess Scotland can go for the same way, but I like their food. Yeah, England, dude. They don't. The stuff they pass off as food. That ain't food.
I'm totally ignorant on that
they
subject.
try to claim your meals.
I've never had British food.
Oh man,
that I know of. Hey, English muffins. Does that count?
First of all, Brad, let me assure you, you are missing out on nothing.
Man, you feel very strongly about the topic.
I'm very I'm an American, and I'm very pro Brexit 1776.
Oh yeah, me too.
So what do you think Constant Freeman's overall mission was in the South? He was doing more than just settling some land disputes, it seems like, right?
Well, he was definitely regulating westward expansion. I mean, that's pretty obvious. In fact, well, I'll wait and get to that. But yeah. But you got Cato West on the other side, who we'll really get into in the next one because, like I've said, he's his counterpart on the other side of the territory. But I think the main thing, because like I've said, it's all about land. I think this is just Constant Freeman being sent there by George Washington to control westward expansion to the Mississippi River, which coincidentally Cincinnati is because that's kind of how we kicked off the topic today. But yeah, Cincinnati is right there, Fort Massac.
Yeah, I mean, it's a main port. I mean, that's why they set up their base of operations there. The society that is, as far as this westward expansion goes, that's the main port to the west.
Yes, sir. It was the gateway at the time. For sure. I mean, just exclusively Cincinnati. I mean, there was no close second. I mean, it was Cincinnati. As far as being,
I think the population is getting back up there, but I think the population is getting back up there in Cincinnati, but it had its peak population in the late, I think, around 1870.
So people are bailing out, skipping town. What?
Well, it just gives you a relative comparison. Well, it's the measure or the transportation method of the economics, right? So it's the shift from the use of the river system, the rails, and whatnot.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But it speaks to the river port system that existed there and how important Cincinnati was.
Yeah. Oh, and to this day, it's still a major port city. Not for the same reasons, but it's still a major port city.
Yeah. Yeah. At one point in time, if you wanted anything on the river, you were going through Cincinnati.
Yeah, it was real important to these guys. It was very important to these guys. That particular, because you could make the argument or the case for other locations along the river there. but that they were just infatuated with this town that eventually became Cincinnati. Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Curious to know if what John Lynn ever did in and around Cincinnati. He had to have passed through there.
Oh man, you got to know he did. I hadn't got him there yet. I hadn't found the paper to say it. So, but he was there. There's no, or at least went through there at least once on his way from Quebec.
Well, more than
New
once, right? As many times as he's traversing to and from, right?
But you know what? You know what we really haven't hit on this topic is you at the time you couldn't go northward. You could only go southward. So how's he getting back around up north? He's having to go through some British lands. If assuming that he's
That's what
taking
I'm
the East
saying. He's
Coast,
going through a lot of varying controlled
hostile
territory, right?
areas. Yeah. This isn't like going from Maine and New Hampshire to Vermont. I mean, this is Spain, France, England, America. But yet he seems like he's in with all of them.
Well, they're well versed in traversing these systems, at least, right? Maybe not they're in with them, but they're well versed in getting around these systems, getting through places, making shit happen, as they say.
Yeah, and I like your theory. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I liked your theory.
I was just going to say Constant Freeman's the guy that makes it happen, right?
Man, I tell you what, he seems to be the go-to guy, doesn't he? Hey, we got some problems down there in Georgia.
Yeah. He's the guy you call when you got constant problems, called Constant Freeman.
Man, I tell you what,
Constant Freeman, solve your problems.
He was the fire putter outer.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, God, you go over there after the Pinckney Treaty and Spain's still kind of being a pain in the ass, and then they send Constant Freeman. And then so not only was it on paper, but they were physically gone. Yeah, so all of them. Still British folks around though, interestingly, but they all had to take the oath to America, which was issued by none other than Cato West, who we'll definitely get into more so in the next one. But he's related to this narrative big time.
Well, that's a good stopping point on Freeman. Then let's stop here on Freeman and let's do a quick let's wrap up today's discussion with some descriptions, at least teeing off point here on Cato West.
All right. We'll just and this will take just 30 seconds.
Teeing off for our next discussion.
But we'll just real quick. So just to kind of give a teaser for the next one, in 1805 in New Orleans, Constant Freeman gave power of attorney to John Lynn. About 6 weeks later, John Lynn is a notary down in the British-controlled islands down there, demanding that the British government release all American ships and cargo. So I just kind of wanted to tease that one because Constant Freeman gave John Lynn power of attorney about 6 weeks before this went down. So that's
a pretty important thing right there.
Yes, sir, it is. And I just actually found it today while I was researching for the show. That was just something I came across.
Oh, nice. So he gave him power of attorney?
He gave, yes, sir, Constant Freeman, the one and only Constant Freeman, gave John Lynn power of attorney in 1805, 6 weeks before John Lynn is in British-controlled, God, what was the name of the dang country? It wasn't Jamaica, it was Bahamas. It just said Bahamas. So I guess it very well said it could have been Jamaica then. So, but demands the British government release all American ships and cargo. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing we're going to have to dig into more for the next installment here. What else is Cato West doing? Where did he come from?
Man, he's another man of mystery. So he was an orphan in Virginia. His father, William West Jr., passed, so his older brother got custody of him until he turned of age, which was 17 or 18. But interestingly, there's court cases over there in Virginia where Cato West wants to get out from under his wardship so he can go join the army there in Virginia, fight for the Patriots. But kind of a sketchy paternal line, but I did find some interesting stuff that I'll share with you on the next one and go into it more. But he has a very interesting paternal line for sure. And he was an orphan, which is kind of becoming a theme. I really didn't think it would be when I started off, but the more you kind of go into it, it's like, man, this is kind of a recurring theme here. And in Virginia, hell, maybe he was one of Ricard's. Or who knows?
I was going to say, you sounds like you may have got recruited, right?
Very could have been. I can't remember whose company he was in, but it was somebody important. But it just shows you how my memory is these days. But I could go to my timeline.
He's another man of the society, right? He was a military officer, right?
Yes, he was. And it's very interesting to me that after the revolution, basically the first thing he does officially is goes to Spanish occupied Natchez. His daughter married into the Greens, who married into the Davidsons, as in John Alexander, Alexander Davidson, who we've talked about with Burr. John Alexander married into the Greens.
Is this the same Dr. Timothy Green family?
I haven't put it together yet, if I'm being fair, but this particular Green family, though, was still the father was Thomas Marston Green. But Cato West is marrying into this family, as is John Alexander Davidson. In fact, I want to say Cato West may have been John Alexander Davidson's father-in-law. Yeah, I think he was. Cato West was John Alexander Davidson's father-in-law at one point.
We'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into that genealogy some more for our next installment. But Cato West here, not only was he a man of the society, he was also the secretary of the Mississippi Territory and was the territorial governor of Mississippi in 1804 and 1805. Correct?
The acting governor, but still officially
Major
governor.
Blair.
But he was, yeah. So he's like the other Constant Freeman on the other side, but he might be actually a little more interesting if that's possible. I just don't have as much information on him. Maybe that's why he's interesting, because I don't know as much about him as I'd like. I just know his bloodline is very interesting. His paternal bloodline is very interesting. But he's down there.
Well, I can't wait to discuss that more here in the future there, Brad.
Yeah, he's palling up with the Spanish, though.
If I can offer one closing statement here on today's discussion and turn it over to you for the same.
Yes, sir.
See here on the Wikipedia article for Cato West, the source of all information on the interwebs, it says that he corresponded with U.S. President Thomas Jefferson. That's not a surprise. I mean, obviously the position he was in, that makes sense. But it is a nice little citation here in the first paragraph for the Wikipedia entry, because who else have we been talking here today that corresponded with Thomas Jefferson?
John Land. Probably about the same topic.
The man who we started today's discussion off of, right? John Land.
I told you. It all comes back to Don Juan Lind.
Yep. It
all comes back to John.
An interesting dynamic.
You there?
Yes, sir. Do you have any closing statements for us today? Any closing thoughts or anything you want to wrap up here?
Oh, no, sir. We just we cut out for a few seconds. I don't know if it was on my end. I was just making sure I caught everything you said.
Good to go. I can hear you loud and clear. I appreciate your time today, Brad. It's been good. Kicking the can down the trail on the Natchez Trail here on this tale. But the long and the short of it is, man, these folks like to travel. That's my thoughts on today's discussion. These folks like to travel.
They love to travel, don't they? Yes, sir. And Natchez is a hub.
Yeah, and that's coming from somebody who likes to travel himself. I'm a traveler myself here, not in any kind of weird esoteric sense. I'm just saying I like to travel.
Yeah, me too, man.
So what's the biggest takeaway here on Constant Freeman then today, Brad? What would you say the overarching narrative you've shared with us today? What do you think the biggest takeaway to you is that sticks out in your brain hole as far as Constant Freeman goes?
Man, just other than his versatility, just he's good friends with George Washington. He's a Cincinnati guy. He's in Cincinnati at important times. He's being put on an important assignment to handle affairs in Georgia. He's up in Quebec with John Lind on a merchants committee or lodge. So man, just his versatility, and it's like everywhere he is, he's doing something important. He's not just there to eat the local food.
That's a good point. And 20 years after he's on that merchant list with John Lind in Quebec, he's signing over power of attorney to John Lind, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then a few weeks after that,
1787 to about 1717 or 1817.
So the thing down in the Bahamas,
30 years, right?
1805.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
My disregard. So 1787 to 1805. We're talking what, 18 years?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they're down there in the
Quebec to the Bahamas. These two men know each other. They're doing business.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In British occupied places.
Doing British occupied things. Hopefully, Brad, they're not eating British food, because if I may also share with you and the folks of the interwebs what I was referring to by British food, here's a nice, wonderful British meal here. I got an image for you here on the screen if you can see it, Brad. Get yourself a nice, delicious, whatever the fuck this is in Britain next time.
No,
hopefully they weren't eating too much
Spanish
of this
food.
old John.
No, just give me some Spanish food or some Louisiana food. I'm fine.
Right. I'll take anything, whatever the hell that is. I will not have that. All right, Brad. I appreciate your time, sir. Anything else here? Otherwise, we'll pick this up next week here on the next installment of Chasing Miniere. And all your links are in the show notes for folks to check out some of this tale on their own. I highly recommend you do. This is a extremely interesting tale that Brad's uncovered.
Oh, thank you so much, man. It's always a pleasure to come on your show and just talk to you about interesting stuff. And sorry earlier about the technical difficulties, but I think we did a good show today.
I wouldn't have it any other way, Brad. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's the perfect Operation GCD, situation. Because I don't know if you realize this, I like to put in little halftime breakup points in the audio RSS feed version of this.
Oh, I love those.
And that's you just gave me you don't have to look for it. You just gave me the perfect spot to insert that.
Awesome.
My halftime interludes.
All right,
sir. Until next time, I appreciate your time, and looking forward to more journeys in the Society of the Cincinnati Tale.
Yes, sir. Me too. Looking forward to it.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your six. Look in that garbage can, 'cause you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.